On today's Witch Word of the Day, it's one that I came up with myself, Kevin, because of Agatha all along. Oh my god, this show's so good. We're only, well, by this time, 3 episodes in. But in Marvel Comics, the Witch's Road is a magical dimension parallel, plur, if you will, to Earth that can only be accessed by witches and practitioners of magic. The Witch's Road is mainly the origin of all magic and the home of several mystical entities, so it is incredibly vast. Like my asshole. It also serves as an afterlife for witches and practitioners of magic. There is a unique phenomenon of this place called the trials, where one must face 7, it's always 3 or 7, challenges. And if they make it to the end, they will have a wish granted, such as get their powers back. Agatha.
Yeah. Oh, your magic. Oh, your power.
Oh, your
Make me the most
magic.
powerful witch.
We started saying magic like that because of the Nicole Kidman AMC thing where she's like I'm here for magic.
Valid. All right, I'll take it.
Thank you.
You haven't even read that?
Wait, what are you doing with the book?
So he has the confidence to finish the story.
Hear now the words of the witches.
Welcome to Words of the Witches, the Charmed podcast that will guide you through the lesser-known published lore of the Charmed universe.
In this night and in this hour, we call upon our fanboy power, bringing education and stupefaction to all of you.
Together, we will use our knowledge and reverence abundantly, but also find ourselves sassy and delightful.
Which is why we will truly be charmed.
Oh my goodness, welcome to Words of the Witches, episode 122. We're discussing the section of Totally Charmed, section 2, their roots, and that's why we chose the Witches Road, because it's all about, like, you know, the forest and the roots of all magic, and yes, it's fitting, see?
It comes together.
Themes. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Kevin, your resident Charmed resource.
And I'm Sean, and I just love the supernatural.
Amazing. So we just did a bonus episode about 90s Con, which was a really nice time. I did see Alyssa Milano in New York. I went down for a day and saw Alyssa Milano in New York. I also got body painted as Wolverine. That was fun. But yeah, lots of things are happening. So I'm sorry that things are crazy. I'm not sure how we're going to keep up with this podcast in the next few weeks, but we're going to do our best. And yeah, just forgive us if we're late.
Fair warning.
Yeah. So we'll keep you informed on what's happening if anything goes crazy, but so far so good. I just feel like there's going to be something coming on the horizon.
Oh, I've seen your OnlyFans. I know what it is.
Yeah, it might be me. It's a very good chance it might be me. Anyway, so we're here. Well, let me talk about our poll. Speaking of things that come.
Stop it. Get off the horizon.
We had a poll last week.
Who's your favorite sister?
Good, you did remember. Okay. How do you think this went? I mean, we both know ours.
Prue or Piper. It's always Prue or Piper. I'm gonna go Prue. I think it's Prue. It's Prue.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, you better vote for your girl. I was like,
I know, and I
"Vote for
just
your
missed it. Apparently, I always miss them. I tried to do them.
No, I'm bad at them too. So I barely post them. I forget to post them. Someone's like, J-Wog, he messaged me. He's like, I might have missed it, but my vote is Piper. I'm like, oh, I didn't even put it up yet.
Nice. Oops.
But the results are as follows. Your girl, Paige, got the least amount of votes.
Ah!
I'm so sad. Well, I mean, I guess
kind
I
of
love them all.
not surprised. She's not the most popular. I know that. I know it.
Yeah, she got 29 votes, 8%, but she does have a lot of love. So all these sisters have a lot of love. 35 votes for Phoebe. She got 11%, so also not very strong. Then it was Prue, 115 votes, 36%. But Piper was the winner at 45% of the votes, 144 of them.
Wow. That Piper.
Mm-hmm. You're heart of this family, Piper. So yeah, There you go. That's what that is. So, should we get into this section of the book?
Yes.
Totally Charmed. Section 2, Their Roots.
I don't know why you're saying two like you're Mr. Owl today, but I'm here for it.
I don't know either.
To who?
A 1, a 2, a 3. All right, anyway. So this one only had 3 essays in it. I'll read the description of this introduction to the section. It says, The Roots, History, and the Hallowells. If coal was the source of all evil, then what's the source of all Hallowell? The Charmed stories have drawn on myths, legends, fairy tales, and history, but in spite of the pilot title, not much Wiccan this way comes when you're looking at the sisters' lineage. And this is deceptive because these essays don't really talk about this at all. So I'm like, okay, but here we go. So the first essay was Charmed, a Modern Fairy Tale by Debbie Viguier, which...
Bless you.
A Chewbacca burger. But Debbie Viguier is a name we've seen before. She actually wrote one of the novels. She wrote the Pied Piper novel.
Oh.
And the Pied Piper novel is also the novel that sparked the musical. So it's really a weird full circle.
Wow. I like that.
Actually, while we're on the topic, I should bring up what's her face from the last one, Evelyn Vaughn, who wrote the Prue essay last episode. She wrote on a book called Words of the Witches.
Oh, that sounds
Under
familiar.
a pseudonym.
I've heard that.
So it's so weird, these interesting little connections.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, little introduction says, while each of the Hallowells has their own distinct personality, Debbie Viguier argues that they're all descended from the same source. Their staying power comes from the fact that they're all fairy tale heroines. Yeah, and so she goes on to say that the fairy tale themes that shaped Charmed were the power of love, the importance of innocence, the battle between good and evil, and disguises. All those little things in fairy tales come into play. And each of those represent a sister. So she compares Phoebe and Cole to Beauty and the Beast. And she says that love tamed the monster and conquered all. Phoebe was like the innocent, whatever. And she's like, I'm gonna find the beast, but he's not gonna reveal his true nature. La 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 la. But then after that was, they think happily ever after when they get, married and everything. But after that, they say Phoebe moved on from Beauty and the Beast and became the Little Mermaid. And she was willing to give up the life she knew in order to be with her prince. And then her sister's love ended up saving her in the end. And that was the twist. She didn't know this because it wasn't out yet, but then that was Frozen.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So yeah. Then it went on to Piper, and she said, Piper is Sleeping Beauty. She demonstrates heart and compassion and gives up some of her own innocence to protect the innocence of children. She becomes the first to be a mother. And then she says when Leo heals her in Awakened, that's she essentially wakes from her sleep. And she's like, ah. Then it goes on to say how Paige has a dual role of Snow White and the Evil Queen. So she represents the battle between good and evil, which is interesting because she was saying how Paige was the one that's most prone to being evil, but then they always talked about how Phoebe was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, well, this is an interesting take. But she says that Paige is the ultimate caregiver who makes it her mission to help others. True. But then she also has darkness and is vulnerable. She may be swayed to abuse magic to get what she wants quickly. And her arc is the struggle to find balance between those extremes. Cool. And then we have the Prue section. I love the Prue section. Well, of course I do. But she says, Prue is the hero in disguise. And they say that all of her transformations in the show, Ms. Hellfire, being a man, being a dog, etc., are all expressions of parts of herself that she repressed. And this ties back to even the blue sweater Prue and the pink sweater Prue. All those repressed parts of her. And Prue suppressed so much of herself. So the Charmed seasons 1, 2, and 3 that were with Prue also brought that extreme importance of keeping being witches a secret. So all of her sisters felt that kind of need to suppress, probably because of her guide. And then in season 4 onward, that internal pressure to suppress the fear of exposure went away. The external factors were still there, but the sisters were lighter, and they became a little bit more willy nilly. I would think, actually. So even after all hell breaks loose, but okay, yeah. So that's that. That's pretty much this essay. Thoughts?
Yeah, this one I don't like. I love fairy tales, and I love this connection and how well explained it was connected to the sisters. But at the same time, I was like, this didn't really say a lot though either. I don't know. It just didn't dig very deep for me. But
I feel yeah. Go ahead.
it's an interesting idea because there's also Deadpool Illustrated, where basically like all the Marvel universe is based on literary tales. So I think we could say this about a lot of things, but yeah, I especially liked the breakdown of Phoebe as like the Belle character and then the Little Mermaid character. So it was interesting
Mhm.
enough. It was a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could do this with pretty much any kind of narrative. Find the Disney connections, if you will. um, and it says, because they always give you a little bit of the author at the end of them, and it says the author Debbie loves theme parks, so you know she's a Disney nerd after an essay like this.
Yeah.
You know that's what she does. So I feel pretty seen about that.
Mhm.
All right, so tell us about the next one.
Okay, I was really confused by this. So this one's called The Stake in the Future, and it's Ruth Glick writing as Rebecca York. So what's the point of writing as somebody else if you're telling us that you're writing as them? I don't understand that. I don't understand that.
It was weird. Yeah.
But yeah, this one was probably to me the most interesting out of the three. This one talks about how we can kind of see where a society is by how literature is treating women or how women are treated in general. So it talks about like when we look at 1520, we were seeing women who were perceived as witches being persecuted and killed. It was just a horrible time for women. They were seen as like a commodity. They were seen as kind of a husband's property. So when we look at Charmed, we see that one of the things that it kind of jumped around a little bit actually now that I look at my
It
notes,
did.
but it talks about Charmed was very successful about showing the everyday life of woman and like a modern woman, a strong woman, but also it had a lot of humor in making like the normal be part of the paranormal or like the normal being up against the paranormal. So I would agree with that because we talked about that a lot when we covered the show is that everyday things that we have to get done were made comical in Charm because of the use of magic and the paranormal. But it talks about how the woman of Charmed, unlike older witches of the past, they were sexy and sensual, and they reveled in their womanhood, and they could have sex without doing it for magic or it being with the devil. It was just women having sex because they want to have sex. And it talked about how like it went through a brief look at the history of women, how in World War II, women were forced to work, and Rosie the Riveter became a sign of strength for women who are like, no, I can do this job. I don't want to go back now that I've got a taste for it. And then birth control gave sexual freedom because now they didn't have to worry about getting pregnant. And then women's rights in the 60s and 70s that brought us closer to equality. I say closer because I feel like we're still not there. We're still
Right.
not where we need to be with women. um I did talk about how Phoebe like, and I love this. This is something that actually my best friend Rachel talked to me about how a lot of times we see the exploitation of women as a weakness or like exploiting something, but she's like, when I dress sexy and I get
Right.
attention, I feel powerful. And this is exactly what it talks about with Phoebe and Cole, like how
Hmm.
women can control men very easily. And when we look at history, a lot of times the wife is the one who's the backbone for the husband. And it talks about how that's kind of what we see in this show is these women use their feminine powers of sexualness to get stuff too, as well as their powers. And it talks about how okay, I kind of didn't like this last part. They kind of came from my girls, my woman. I'll agree with them for I Dream of Genie. It said earlier magical women were treated like ditzy broads, basically, which I mean, in I Dream of Genie, she's a genie, so like she's supposed to be his slave.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little different. But then they also talked about Samantha Stevens as ditzy. I was like, she was not ditzy. She was a
No.
smart woman. And like, even though she was confined to what a woman was supposed to be in like the 70s as kind of a housewife, she still ran that household. And even
She
though
was
she
doing
did like,
things. She was
yeah,
influencing all the time.
yeah, and much like Charmed, like yeah, every week she would make a spell that would like have weird consequences, and that was the whole basis of the show. But like she managed Darren, she managed, is it Darren or Darian? It's Darren, right?
Darren.
Darren.
Yeah.
Yeah, she managed him, she managed her mother, she managed them against each other. She had a kid. Like, yeah, fuck you. Ruth Glick writing as Rebecca York. Don't call my girl ditzy. But yeah, overall, I mean, it was interesting. It was a look back at women's suffrage and how it compares to this show. And according to this, she feels that with how well the girls were presented in Charmed, it's a good look at what our future can be as we move forward.
Yeah, I took some interesting notes for this one too. I took a lot of notes about when she described what happened to in the witch hunts, because that gives us the basis for what happens further. So in the Middle Ages, sex was dirty and shameful, and the witch hunts were pretty much an excuse for frustrated or embarrassed men to get their jollies.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking, the whole time I kept thinking was like, would these witch hunts even happen if they had porn? If they just had porn?
True. Well,
Can
and
you
this got
imagine?
me thinking too. Like, it bugs me so much that we as a humanity, as a society, have made sex such a dirty thing. Like, it's
Yeah.
a thing that feels really good. It's a thing that's enjoyable. But like it even talked about in this, they used to like be fully clothed and used to have to be under the covers. They couldn't even see each other and they just had
Yeah.
to have sex for procreation. I'm like, why do we turn it into this horrible thing? Like, why can't we just have fun?
Yeah, and so it's all these like, because it was such a scary like thing, even though people wanted to embrace it, they couldn't. So it was so shameful. So they used this witch hunt as like a way of getting the porn. Because this is what happened when you were accused of a witch. You were stripped, shaved, and inspected for witch marks, particularly in private areas.
Yep. I was
Okay.
thinking that too. Like, are they putting
Yeah.
their finger in? Are they getting hard off
Yeah.
this? Like, it just felt very like ew.
Yeah. Like if they found a mole or a vaginal tear from childbirth, you were a witch. Okay, cool. Um Then they were tortured and maimed to extract confession. That's the bad part. Taking your fingernails off and doing weird stuff.
Ugh.
But I didn't realize this about confessions. A confession usually was a written description. You had to write it down, your confession. You had to write the description of the devil's penis and the orgies that you attended with him. Really now? Really now? So it's so terrible. So I was like, wow. And then, of course, then they're killed after all that stuff. Often raped beforehand too, because they're so titillated by your orgy story. It's crazy.
It's
So
crazy.
yeah. So and then they did say like even in the Charmed era, witchcraft may still be considered weird or evil, but it's not to that extent. And you said that the play with the mundane and the supernatural and the normal and the magic and all that stuff was fun. This was interesting to me. Okay, she notes that the minute each of the sisters settle down with the right man, the series is over. I was like, and this is in season 7 still. I'm like, it's kind of unfortunate that turned out to be true because that is such a sexist trope. And it's true though. They all found their man, and then the show ended. I was like, thanks, Brad Kern.
Yeah, they could have approached it more from like the Piper standpoint, where once you found your man, if you even need one, then there
Yeah.
could still be problems. It doesn't have to be like a happy ending. They could have just dealt with other things. It doesn't have to be like I found my man, I'm done.
Right. And so I'm disappointed in the way that it kind of ended that way. I would have liked it if maybe one of them didn't find their right guy or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, even though I like the guys, but it would have been interesting if it didn't have to end that way,
Mm-hmm.
But she does note that she is considers Charmed revolutionary and responsible for changing the world by showcasing badass women who are allowed to be the badasses they were and who are not ashamed of their sexuality. And she says how making them the saviors of humanity really shows how civilization matured, and that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. See, and this is why, because you know how much she says how much this is a great feminist show. This is why I'm so offended when the reboot claimed that the original wasn't feminist.
Yeah, that just
That
got
was,
things off to a bad start.
dude, like Charmed is the reason your frilly little reboot exists, and you are standing on the backs of a pioneer show for feminism. Like, how dare you? That's one of the one of the main problems I had with the show, because the reboot was always acting like holier than thou, and it was being hyper woke, and it was saying like, oh, look at what we're doing, we talk about race and gays and sexism, but based on what I observed, they just go down the checklist of what they think modern audiences want. They don't really talk about that stuff. They're just like giving you a product of tokenism instead of actual human connection. If they were representing those things honestly, great, that's what we want, but not the way you did it. So yeah, just saying. I'm just saying. Okay, I'm done. I didn't plan to talk about the reboot like that, but still. Okay. So do you want to do the next one, or should I do the next one?
I'll do it.
Okay.
All right. So our last one is, I guess it's Enchanté Not, by Pegaloy.
Like enchanté.
Enchanté.
You know,
Enchanté.
Mhm.
Oh, it's French. Okay, I was thinking more
Yeah.
Spanish, but yeah, Enchanté Not. Pegaloy, I'm gonna say this right now. She needs to get laid.
Oh god, yeah. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I'm like, lady. I have so many thoughts about this one too, but go ahead.
Yeah,
Talk
this
about
was
it.
out of the three, it was my least favorite for multiple reasons. But so this is coming from Peg, who has been, at the time of the writing, she had been a practicing witch for I think about 15 years or so. I think she said a decade and a half. So she talks about first the craft, because she feels that, and it's probably true, I feel the same way, the craft probably is why Charmed exists, because it
Yeah.
popularized kind of the witch trope, the sexy witch, and the fact that they both used the same theme song, which was the cover of How Soon Is Now, which pretty big hit.
But then she was all upset and bitter because they didn't use her friend's band
Yeah.
as a theme song.
I thought that too. I'm like, what a weird thing to write.
Like they could have used more exposure. How dare you not use my friend's song?
How dare you? This band that nobody's heard of. How dare you not use them?
And they ended up using some of their songs in the episodes. They did use them down the
Yeah.
line, but she's like, but I would have liked more.
So she said it was only natural that Charm would come about after the craft. But according to her, Charmed helped perpetuate the thought of witchcraft being hereditary, which I guess was a big problem in the world of Wicca around this time. Like from the 80s on, as Wicca was like having its renaissance and on the rise, I guess it started to get messy where people were like, well, I'm a born witch, or my grandmother like bequeathed me a
I
witch.
learned it from my grandmother. Yeah,
Yeah, my
so
grandma.
that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And then like that only worked the first 10 times we heard it.
Yeah. So this started to be seen as like negative. So she was unhappy that Charmed like perpetuated this since the sisters were born into magic, since it was toxic. Actually, I didn't know this part. I didn't know that Gerald Gardner is the one who kind of like took the teachings of other people and popularized it into what we see, a lot of what we see of Wicca today.
Oh yeah, he's
he
the one that made the Book of Shadows term we talked about. He found it in an article and made it up. That's the same guy.
Oh, okay. I remember him now. That's why the
Yeah.
name was familiar.
Uh-huh.
So he took the practices of the Golden Dawn, Aleister Crowley, which of course Aleister Crowley was very influential on Golden Dawn and part of Golden Dawn, and the Kabbalah, and he kind of pieced them together in the 50s, and that started kind of a new branch of Wicca that a lot of people kind of started practicing. And quick plug, if you don't want to hear more about Golden Dawn and Aleister Crowley, we have a 3-part series on it on Once Upon a Cult, along with Jack Parsons, who was very much attached to Aleister Crowley. So yeah, listen to those. Those were good episodes. I'm proud of those. It talked about how many books depict the burning and hanging of 9 million witches in, she called it the burning times. but this has been debunked. The actual number is closer to 500,000 to 1 million. Also, most witches weren't burned. They were hanged or drowned.
Mhm.
So she's like, Charmed is perpetuating the lie. They show witches being burned. They're perpetuating the lie. Okay, girl, get a dick. Also, Charm shows witchcraft is something bigger than it is. So she's complaining basically that, like, she's afraid. What if people think witches actually can freeze time or can blow people up? Or, you know, it's not showing the day-to-day witch life of, like, wearing robes and getting candle wax out of your robe or meditating and all that. I'm like, okay, I get your sentiment, but who's going to watch that? Like, I would love to see the Real House Witches of LA, but to be frank, a lot of it would probably be people sitting around with their eyes closed and their legs crossed meditating. Like, because witchcraft is a very, like, spiritual
Yep.
thing. It's not very showy. So
Right.
what do you
We
want
talked
from
about
Charmed?
this.
What do you want
Yeah.
it to be?
Right.
I mean, to her
So-
point, she did say they should have called it something else besides Wicca. If it was just witchcraft in general, they could have, in her opinion, got away with whatever they wanted. But since they called it Wicca, it's tying it to an actual thing, making people think that's what it is.
Yeah. But they do have a lot of really close ties, especially in the beginning, that they were inspired from. They may not be exactly accurate, but they were definitely using Wicca as a base. But
Well, the one part that really made me want to throw my phone when I was reading it was when she was like, yeah, it's like when we play a drinking game. Every time the girls change their outfits, I'm like, oh, so you're watching. You're sitting here bitching this much,
Yeah.
but you watching.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm like, if you hate this show so much, why just shut it off? Why even writing in this book? So yeah, she credits the craft right away, and she says that was the year that everything started. But I would say that it was bubbling. I mean, the craft was probably the biggest surge, but it was bubbling before this. We had, the Witches in 1990. We had Hocus Pocus in 93. The Witches of Eastwick in 87. Sabrina also came out in 1996. So there was a lot of witch stuff happening in this time, and it just kept going and going. And she thinks the craft is such a masterpiece, like,
Yeah.
oh, I love the craft so much. And then she calls Charmed, this is what her quote, ill-conceived, bland, sappy, predictable, and devoid of sophistication. Like, really, girl.
God.
So, and then she says that witch representation went away from devil worshippers and then is now represented with silly love spells and talking cats, Sabrina. And she mourns that actual witches are no longer taken seriously. She does besmirches, you like that? She besmirches Charmed for their life lessons and personal transformations being illusory. She's like how they don't really learn anything, and it was just like a super minor problem for that week. And that I can give here a little bit, but I'm going to talk about more of that at the end. She says, this is how I would rewrite Charmed to be a show that I want to watch. I would have them, like, just not want to go to their jobs, and just, like, they'll be sweaty and get pimples, and their men can be pagan, too. And, yeah, they'll just, like, sit around the house and, like, make cookies or whatever. Broom-shaped cookie cutters. So, first things first, I do appreciate that this book is not afraid to feature essays that criticize Charmed, because it can be refreshing to hear another perspective that's not just raving. That being said, I don't think she really talked about Charmed that much. I think she talked about the craft more than she talked about Charmed.
Yeah.
She spent like pages and pages talking about how much she loves the craft. And the only criticism she had about that was that I didn't like the special effects at the end that were super like CGI and stuff. And she wants her media to be more serious, and she wants to be taken seriously. And my response to that is, why so serious?
Yeah.
Because you come across as uptight and regimented, and I think it would do you some good to enjoy some lighter fare. And then she said she would fix Charm to show me more realistic Wicca problems. And my response to that is, boring!
Yeah.
Because it would be cute here and there, but the show that she wants would be canceled immediately.
I think so too.
It would not have survived. And then the point that she makes about problems of the week not holding much weight, I will give her that, because you see this, occasionally, especially with personal gain. that they don't always learn the lessons, or they still just do it. But despite those frivolities, there is always weight to the character emotion. So even if the plot is kind of off the rails, the emotion is there. And even if it only lasted that episode, it was always authentic in those moments, and it was enough to make us feel. And in my book, that's plenty serious and plenty real for my taste. Boom, take that.
Boom. Yep. Well, and I think when we look at witches in the media, we can look at like LGBTQ in the media. Like for a while, you didn't have any representation. Like if you
Yeah.
did, it was like a joke character. It went on to being like, you know, the sassy friend who's always kind of the same type of gay. And that's all we got for a while. They didn't have any weight. And then we got like Will and Grace, and that's when we started seeing like real gay people in the media. And then it's moved on to, yeah, gay people in the media can be flawed or different. And I think that's kind of what witches are going through. Like we didn't have them at all. We had the Samantha Stevens who's froofy. Charmed was the first time we had like real people as witches who happen to be witches, and I think we'll keep progressing. So maybe we will get somewhere that she wants it to go someday. But yeah, I think in showing exactly what she wants, we hit it on the head. It's boring.
Yeah.
I think the only way to show witches in that light is to do a reality show, but you'd have to also focus on like the drama behind it and their lives. And I
Right.
think at a certain point it would become either boring or they'd have to like jump the shark and like show something to make it extravagant. And either way, it's like not true witchcraft still.
Because I can see like a special, like an episode or two, but it's not something that you can sustain.
Yeah.
You know. Any final thoughts about any of these essays, this section?
Yeah, I mean, they were interesting. They got us talking. I think the second one, like we said, is the deepest because it actually talks about a woman in real life. And I agree, like, especially I read once that like you can see the state of like how people feel about government based on what sci-fi movies are coming out because they show our fears. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
Like,
yeah.
so yeah, I totally understand where they're coming from with like the state of womanhood, and it's true and an interesting thing to look at when you're watching media.
Yeah. I will say that when I heard their roots, and especially reading that beginning description, I was expecting a dive into the source of their power, more about their family and history and magic. We didn't get any of that in this.
Nope.
So that was misleading. I do like these, but none of them were as compelling as like the Piper and Phoebe essay from the first section.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think they're fine, and they're good to get you discussing. The last two made my claws come out, so I guess kudos to that, because I had feelings. I have no canonical errors. There's nothing canonical that they did wrong in these. So
Oh wow. Okay.
get it section for not having any errors.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the tips for future white lighters.
Oh, we're really just messengers? Guides? Think of us as guardian angels for good witches.
Tips for future white lighters.
I was out being a force of good in the universe.
What is something that we could learn from what we read today?
I would say, how do I want to put this? Like, look to media not only as entertainment, but it gives you a real look at what we're going through and what suffrage we're going through. If you're seeing a lot of movies about people, which I have seen in comics, movies, and shows, if you're seeing a lot of stuff about a dictator like president or leader over a group of people, maybe people aren't happy with their president. For some reason,
Yeah.
we got a lot of that in 2016 to 2020. If you see a lot of, stories about women who are losing their rights or like trying to attain something, there's probably unrest in, womanhood. So keep an eye on media and what you're seeing and think about it.
We love our women. Yes,
Yeah, we
women.
do.
My tip is we can consume something and everyone will come at it from a completely different angle. One's experiences, values, and personal interests all factor in to an interpretation of a narrative or media or whatever. And it is okay to disagree. unless you are a Trump supporter, then it's kind of a deal breaker. But otherwise, respect the differences and maybe expand your potential to view the bigger picture. So, yeah. Okay. So the last thing we got today, this is a very quick episode. P is for poll.
Piper. You mean it's just you and Prue, huh?
Phoebe? Phoebe, you there?
And a big hello to you too, Penny.
Come on, Patty. The rest is up to them.
Paige. My name is Paige.
Another P, imagine that.
P is for poll.
Now, this is kind of a fun question. It's based off each of these 3 essays. If Charmed were another genre of TV show, what would you prefer? A fairy tale show, like Once Upon a Time? A Middle Ages witchcraft show, kind of like Salem? Or a documentary show? I called it True Life, I'm a Witch.
I'm gonna go with True Life, I'm a Witch, just because I think it's time. I think we could finally see like real life witches. I'm betting it's probably not going to be the most like high action show, but I'm game to see it tried. We haven't seen that yet, and I'm here for it.
I feel like True Life, I'm a Witch might actually exist. I'm not sure, but I feel like it might actually exist. Like an episode.
I'm gonna look for it.
So I do have the True Life, I'm bisexual episode because I'm like, ooh, I'm bisexual. I want to watch that. But they have like 22 seasons of that show, so
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like that might be fun and different too, even though we made fun of it because the show that she wants would be boring. But if we did it this way, it would be different enough from what's out right now, because we do have a lot of witch shows that I think people could tune in if. See, I feel like it would just be a short-term thing, though. I don't think it's something that would be like seasons long.
You know how it could be seasons long is if they focused on a different person every episode and different types of magic and their beliefs. That would be cool, because then we could see
true.
like, I'm an actual Satanist who believes Satan exists. I'm a Satanist who doesn't believe Satan exists, and you know how different people interpret the different types of magic.
Mm-hmm. I remember like the TLC show. They had like the wife swap where they had like, oh, that's what she is not a Christian.
She is dark-sided.
Dark-sided stars. Oh, the memories. Oh, I need to find a clip of that and post it on Instagram or something. Because if you don't know, there was this show called Wife Swap, and there's one where like the super Christian lady and this pagan mother switched places, and they had to live each other for a while. And at the end of it, she came home and she was like, "Oh, blasphemy!" That was good TV.
That was.
All right. On that note, where can people find you, Sean?
You can find me on Sean Ferret. Right now, you can find cute pictures of me as Anway from from Inside Out 2 from Oogie Boogie this past Tuesday. Right now, I am in Minneapolis with Kevin, so you can find pictures of us at the Uncanny Experience and any of my other projects, like my book or other podcasts, Solving for X and X-Men Task Podcast. Yeah,
this weekend we'll be having a full weekend in Minneapolis at X-Men conventions, doing lots of things. So the next episode might be late because we won't have time to go over the next section of the book by the time we usually record. So we'll see what we can do. But just be on the lookout, be mindful, keep checking in to see what's going on. Cool. You can find this podcast at Words of the Witches on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, or Words of Witches on the X Place Twitter thing. And we will see you soon for part 3 of this. We're going to look at their moral and magical world. So we're talking about how jerky the elders are.
Oh. Are they jerks? I've never noticed that. Would you say they're dicks? Are the elders dicks?
They might be.
There should be a song.
There should be. I feel like I've heard that somewhere before. So, all right, Spellworders. See you soon. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Your destiny still awaits.